Today we're going to be solving a quadratic equation. Our equation today is 5x squared minus 12x equals 9. The first step in solving this equation is to have the equation equal 0. And right now it is equal to 9, so we need to go through the process of making this equation equal 0. To do that, we're going to subtract 9 from both sides of the equation. That leaves me with 5x squared minus 12x minus 9 equals 0. The left side is in descending order, and we want to make sure that we do that whenever we rewrite this after moving the 9 over. Now we're going to factor by grouping. We're going to bring down the first term, 5x squared, add 2 blanks, and bring down the last term, negative 9. And this equation is still equal to 0. Next, we need to figure out what goes in these blanks. A in this problem is 5, and C in this problem is negative 9. So if I multiply 5 times negative 9, I get negative 45. Now we need to figure out what are the factors of negative 45 that multiply to give me negative 45 and add to give me negative 12. If I break down 45, I get 1 and 45, 3 and 15, and 5 and 9. The combination of these numbers that will give me the 12 that I'm looking for is the 3 and the 15. So I can go ahead and put 3x and 15x in the blanks. And I would now need to figure out what are my signs so that when I add these two terms together, I get back that negative 12x. If I'm looking at the 3x and the 15x, the only way that would give me a negative 12x is to make the 15 negative. Now that we've figured out the signs and the numbers that go into the blanks, we want to factor this by grouping because we have 4 terms. So we're going to group the first 2 terms and group the second 2 terms together. In the first group, we need to now figure out what is the greatest common factor. The only thing in common with these 2 terms is the x. So we're going to put that out front, and we're going to divide the 5x squared and the 3x by that greatest common factor of x. What is our remaining factor when we do that? Well, let's look and see. This ends up being 5x plus 3, and the x's cancel. Now we're going to look at the second set. I have negative 15x minus 9. What is the greatest common factor here? We need to remember that our greatest common factor also needs to take into consideration the sign of the first term in that group. And the first term in that group is a negative. So our greatest common factor should also be a negative. If I look at my numbers, 15 and 9, the common factor with those is 3, and I have no variable in common. I want to put the negative 3 in front of the parentheses, negative 15x minus 9. When I do that, I need to divide the negative 15x and the negative 9 by 3. And now we're going to simplify to figure out what is the remaining factor. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is 5. And I'm going to bring down the x, and negative 9 divided by negative 3 is positive 3. Close parentheses, and this is still set equal to 0. We know we're on the right track when these parentheses match, and in this case they do. Now we want to write this as a completely factored form on the left side. Now that our parentheses match, we can write that set first, although it really doesn't matter the order of these factors on this step, so you could certainly write this in reverse order. My 5x plus 3 I write first, and then the factors, the greatest common factors I took out in the previous step will now become my other factor here. So this is going to be x minus 3. And all of this still equals 0. Most of this should look familiar if you've done factoring already. But the next step is where we change just a little bit because this is an equation. We can use what's called the zero factor theorem to solve this equation and figure out the solutions. The zero factor theorem states that you can set each of these factors equal to 0 to figure out the solution to this equation. So I will have 5x plus 3 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. And if you think about that, if one factor is 0, then it doesn't matter what the other factor is. 0 times anything is going to be 0, and the reverse would also be true. Now that I have linear equations, I need to solve each of these linear equations just the way that I would have done previously. I'm subtracting 3 from each side, and I would have 5x equals negative 3, and divide by 5 on both sides. And I can get a fraction here, and in this case I get negative 3/5. On the right side, x minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to add 3, and I would get x equals 3. So my solutions would be x equals negative 3/5 and 3. The order of these do not matter, so you could certainly write 3 and negative 3/5. And that's how you would solve a quadratic equation.